A quick look at an interesting gun that is just a little more than a century old, the Colt Police Positive Special. Thanks for joining me today while we take a look at a gun that a friend of mine loaned to me. Harry has loaned me several guns in the past. This one belonged to his grandfather, and there's a story about this gun. We'll talk about it here in just a minute. This is the Colt Police Positive Special. The first issue of this was somewhere around 1907 and 1927. On a serial number lookup, this particular gun was made in 1922, making it just over a century old. The Police Positive Special was originally derived from the Police Positive, but they extended the cylinder just a little bit to accommodate the 3220 and also the 38 Special cartridge, which this is chambered in, by the way. They also had to lengthen the frame a little bit to accommodate that cylinder, so a slight variation from the original. This one has a 5-inch barrel, fixed sights, typical trough type rear sight, which is even smaller than what we're used to on trough rear sights nowadays. This had the positive lock safety in it, which meant that you could carry around in the chamber under the hammer, which you couldn't do in some of the earlier ones. And I don't know if you'll be able to see it through the camera here. As the firing or the hammer goes forward and the trigger is held back, you can just barely see it in there. The firing pin protrudes through the frame, and then as I release the trigger, the hammer comes back. So without that trigger being held back, the hammer or the firing pin can't hit a cartridge that's in the chamber, so you could carry all 6 rounds of 38 Special in this particular gun. It has the Colt logo, of course, on the back, and this gun's in pretty good shape. It does have some wear on it, not a lot, a couple little minor pits here and there, but for a century-old gun, certainly can't complain about it. Round trigger, double action, and single action. The trigger is actually not bad for an old gun. In fact, this feels better than some modern guns. You can, of course, fire it single or double. Has hard rubber type grips on it with the Colt name on it, and a little bit of scrolling on it. Not something that I would really want to spend a lot of time hanging on to and shooting. I can imagine I'd get my knuckle busted right about here. But hey, that's for a century-old gun again. No real complaints. It does have the, of course, the swing-out cylinder and the typical Colt pullback on the latch to open the cylinder, extractor rod, and interesting little gun. This was available in blue or nickel. It was available in 4, 5, or 6-inch barrel. Again, this has the 5-inch. And apparently this was Harry's grandfather's gun. Now, apparently Harry's grandfather was a coal miner and also a businessman. And he said the coal fields were kind of a rough place to work and live back then. So he had the gun for protection, and he also had some money on hand when he was working as a businessman. Harry didn't know where or when the gun was purchased, but it was certainly prior to World War II. And again, this particular one was made in 1922. A story here that Harry gave me said that apparently his uncle went on a camping trip and took the gun with him for he and his friends to shoot. Somehow got into trouble. Didn't say what kind of trouble, but apparently didn't have permission. This would have been, again, back in the 1930s. And apparently this gun has been passed down in the family since then, and it's now in Harry's small collection of family heirlooms. So the Colt Police Positive Special, 1922 vintage, 38 caliber, 5-inch barrel. Interesting little gun. No, we didn't shoot it. Harry said I could, but no, I'm not going to take this nice gun out to the range and see what it'll do. And I don't have high hopes for it at any kind of great distance, but anyway, it's just an interesting gun to look at. Thanks for dropping in while we take a look at this vintage gun.